How much do you know about the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Africa's largest hydroelectric dam? Let's take a step back to the genesis of this colossal project. It all began nearly a decade ago in 2011, when Ethiopia embarked on a journey to construct the largest hydroelectric dam in Africa, a journey that promised to revolutionize the country's energy sector. This gargantuan dam, known as the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, was conceived as a beacon of progress and development for Ethiopia. With a projected capacity of over 5,000 megawatts, it was planned to more than double the country's current electricity output. The dam was not just a project, it was a vision. A vision of a brighter, more electrified Ethiopia. A vision of a country with an abundance of energy, not just for its own citizens, but with enough surplus to export to neighboring countries. But this vision was not without its controversies. The dam's construction on the Blue Nile, a major tributary of the Nile River, sparked a series of disputes over water rights. Downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan, expressed grave concerns about the potential impact of the dam on their access to Nile waters. The Nile River, after all, is a lifeline for millions, providing much-needed water for agriculture and domestic use. Environmental concerns also loomed large. The construction of such a large-scale hydroelectric project inevitably carries with it significant environmental implications. Questions were raised about the dam's potential impact on local ecosystems, on the river's flow, and on the livelihoods of communities downstream. As the dam neared completion, these controversies took on a new urgency. Tensions began to rise, and what began as a vision of progress and development started to look more like a predicament. But how did we get here, and where do we go from here? Let's delve deeper into this predicament. As the dam's completion drew closer, fears grew among downstream nations. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, was not just a beacon of hope for Ethiopia's electrification efforts, but also a source of rising tensions for its neighbors, Egypt and Sudan. The Nile River, a lifeline for these nations, was under threat, or at least that's how it seemed. Egypt and Sudan, nations heavily dependent on the Nile for their water supply, had grave concerns. The possibility of the river's flow being disrupted by the massive dam upstream, even if temporarily, was a specter that loomed large. The fear was not just about the water, it was about life itself. Agriculture, the backbone of these economies, relied heavily on the Nile's waters. A disruption in the water supply could potentially lead to a decrease in agricultural yield, threatening food security. The potential for water shortages also raised concerns about domestic water supply, with millions of people's livelihoods hanging in the balance. Negotiations between the countries were just as turbulent as the waters of the Nile. Disagreements arose, sometimes escalating into diplomatic standoffs. Ethiopia remained firm in its stance, stating that the dam was crucial for its development and electrification efforts. On the other hand, Egypt and Sudan stressed the importance of their water security and the potential risk to their agriculture. The tension was palpable. Decades of reliance on the Nile's waters had shaped the lives and economies of these nations. The GERD threatened to disrupt this delicate balance, and the downstream nations were not ready to take this lying down. It was a classic case of a zero-sum game. One nation's gain seemed to be another's loss, but was it really? Could there be a middle ground, a solution that would allow Ethiopia to progress without threatening the water security of its neighbors? The answer was not clear, and the negotiations continued. While these fears mounted, Ethiopia pressed on, believing the dam essential for its development. With the dam's completion, Ethiopia announced a significant increase in its electricity production. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, is more than just a feat of engineering. It's a beacon of hope for Ethiopia, a promise of a brighter, electrified future. With 2 additional turbines now operational, the dam's total output has risen to 1,550 megawatts. This is a significant milestone that marks the transition from the construction phase to the operational phase. To put this into perspective, the dam's potential to generate over 5,000 megawatts will more than double Ethiopia's current electricity output. This could revolutionize the country's development efforts, bringing light to regions that have long been left in the dark. But with great power comes great responsibility, and the dam's operation is not without its share of controversy. The dam's location on the Blue Nile has brought Ethiopia into direct conflict with its downstream neighbors, Egypt and Sudan. These nations rely heavily on the Nile waters for their sustenance, and they fear that the dam could disrupt their access to this vital resource. The dam's operation has thus increased tensions in the region, adding a new layer of complexity to an already intricate geopolitical situation. Moreover, the dam's operation is not as straightforward as it might seem. Its management during prolonged droughts is a delicate balancing act, requiring careful coordination to ensure sustainable hydropower generation while minimizing downstream water deficits. This is a tall order, and one that has sparked fierce debates and disagreements over water usage. Yet, despite its benefits, the dam's operation has far-reaching consequences. As we move forward, it becomes increasingly clear that the dam's operation is not just an issue of engineering or economics, but a matter of diplomacy and cooperation. The dam's impacts are felt far beyond Ethiopia's borders, and its operation will continue to shape the region's future in ways we are only beginning to understand. The dam's operation has created a ripple effect throughout the region. Let's first talk about the river flow. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD as it's known, is changing the way the Nile River behaves. It's a giant structure, holding back billions of gallons of water that would otherwise flow downstream to Sudan and Egypt. That's a lot of water that's just not there anymore, and that's causing a lot of concern. Now, onto the politics. The dam has become a flashpoint in regional relations. Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt are all staking their claims, each with their own perspective on how the Nile's waters should be used and shared. It's a complex puzzle of diplomacy, and it's not yet clear how it will be solved. And what about the environment? Well, dams are double-edged swords. On one hand, the GERD is creating a massive reservoir that can store water during wet seasons and release it during dry ones, which can help mitigate the effects of climate change. On the other hand, it's also altering ecosystems and changing habitats, with impacts that we're still trying to understand. The dam is also sparking debates about the balance of power and resources. Ethiopia sees the dam as a beacon of progress, a way to provide electricity to millions of people who currently live without it. But downstream in Egypt and Sudan, there's fear. Fear of what might happen if the Nile's waters, their lifeblood, are suddenly in short supply. There are no easy answers here. The dam's benefits are tangible: more power, greater control over water resources, but the drawbacks are equally real. Reduced river flows, strained diplomatic relations, potential environmental harm. It's a delicate balance, and one that's still in flux. Some argue that the dam's benefits outweigh its drawbacks. They point to the increased electricity output, the potential for economic growth, the promise of a more resilient future. But others disagree. They worry about the downstream impacts, the potential for conflict, the environmental risks. As we can see, the dam's impact extends far beyond Ethiopia's borders. So, where do we go from here? As we gaze into the future, the path forward is not without its challenges. Yet it's also brimming with possibilities. One potential solution that offers a beacon of hope is a scientific framework for managing the dam. This approach aims to balance sustainable energy generation with minimizing downstream water deficits. It redefines prolonged drought conditions and uses the level of the Aswan High Dam as an indicator, providing a more nuanced understanding of water usage. The beauty of this framework is in its commitment to open science and collaborative efforts. By sharing knowledge and working together, we can address the uncertainties in water and climate research and strive towards peace and prosperity in the region. But scientific solutions alone won't be enough. The future also calls for a spirit of cooperation between countries. The tensions between Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam are rooted in historical conflicts as well as present challenges. To navigate this complex web, these nations must come together for discussions, negotiations, and perhaps even a bit of compromise. For instance, there's an immediate technical challenge of continuing to fill the dam without disrupting water flows to Sudan and Egypt. This requires careful planning, expert input, and above all, a willingness to work towards a common goal. Negotiations on electricity supply and efficient water management are also crucial. If handled well, they could transform the dam from a source of conflict to a powerful tool for regional development. As we look forward, let's remember that every crisis presents an opportunity. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, despite its current issues, holds tremendous potential. It could more than double Ethiopia's current electricity output, paving the way for unprecedented growth and electrification efforts in the country. The future of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: its impact on Africa is far-reaching and profound. As we move ahead, let's strive to steer this impact towards progress, prosperity, and peace. After all, the Nile may be almost out of view, but the spirit of collaboration and innovation is stronger than ever.